Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today, we take sort of a reality check, looking at youth high-risk exposure and the root causes of substance abuse, and why third grade may be the new sixth grade, to borrow from a statement one of our guests made. Allie Houston and Amanda Rogers join us from Fort Madison and Keokuk to talk about their efforts to connect community resources with families and keep Iowa kids safe. Welcome to the show. Let's learn about our guests, starting with Allie. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here today.
Thanks, Peter, for the invite. My name is Allie, and I am the Fort Madison Prevention Coalition Coordinator. I've been in this position since March of 24. Before that, I worked in prevention as well. I was a prevention specialist for alcohol, drug, and dependency services of Southeast Iowa. So I worked in that role for over a year. And prior to that, I was a paralegal for 4 years. So I kind of fell into different categories and roles. But the reason why we feel that it's important for our job primarily is our youth. As we know, our youth is our future. And as we've seen working in the community, that the youth are they kind of suffer when it comes to substance abuse at home. So we'll touch base on that as we go through, but I wanted to just thank you for having us, and we look forward to sharing our stories.
Very cool. Amanda, let's hear why you're here today, because I know you have a sort of a special situation as well that's it's really an emotionally powerful one, and it'd be great to hear about it.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Amanda Rogers. I am the project director of the Best You Coalition in Keokuk. I took this position at the very end of 2021. Before that, I was the membership director at the local YMCA. I've worked at the Y for off and on for about 12 years now, and I've lived in Keokuk for almost 20 years. I got into this job because of my personal life. I adopted, he's now 10, a little boy from my second cousin who was 17 when she got pregnant. She used substances while pregnant, and because of that, my son has several diagnoses due to that prenatal substance use exposure. So that's kind of motivated my work, and it kind of helps me find connections that people need that are hard to find in this area. And it also motivates me then to help other youth. Substance use prenatally or even just in the home in general is a huge problem here. So helping kids is kind of the name of the game.
Yeah, and I do want our guests to understand that though we're talking about where you work, this is not just a problem where you are. This is a problem everywhere, all over Iowa, all over the Midwest. I mean, these are issues that actually you're tackling very effectively in your areas. Now, you work in a lot of counties. I mentioned Keokuk and Fort Madison, but you actually cover up to 9 counties, I think, with the efforts that both of you work on.
Yeah, I believe it's right around that amount. They're rural counties, so primarily Amanda focuses on Keokuk, I focus on Fort Madison. Our goal within the both of us eventually is to make one coalition for all of Lee County and to try to all work as one big community group instead of this county and that county. Instead of separating the two, we essentially our end goal is to work together.
And that makes sense with rural communities in Iowa, because they need help, and working together, creating that village is really, really important. And that's something that both of you do. I mean, you work to create connections out in the community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe starting with you, Amanda, what are some of the really neat sort of connections you've been able to make over the last few years that get this message out?
Definitely partnering with local school district, for sure is a really big one. Of course, thanks to my ties with the YMCA, we are very close partners. In fact, they donated office space for us and work very closely with us. I think some surprising, for me anyway, connections and collaborations is with local businesses that sell and serve alcohol, nicotine, tobacco products. We have several businesses that take our free training and really support the work we're doing, which is great.
And Allie, how about some of your things?
I will partner off or go off what Amanda said. Schools for sure, and local law enforcement. Having their support on everything that we do is great. We have the Fort Madison PD, Amanda has the Keokuk PD, and then we both partner with the Lee County Sheriff's Office. So working with them and having that connection is great. You know, from helping us do compliance checks with alcohol and tobacco to just having them as a resource for any data that we need. having that community partner is key for sure.
Now we're sort of focusing on the effects of substance use disorder on kids. But a bigger problem is mental health as well, because the journey of stressors in a community begin to sort of push the envelope on people. They stress them out, and the mental health issues are they go from the youngest to the oldest. And of course, we look at the youngest as the most innocent. So we have a nature as parents and as community leaders to protect them. But there are simply some truths that are harder to overcome, the pressures that people live under. I'd like to take a short break now, and when we come back, talk about that, sort of what you're seeing as what people are facing and maybe not so willing to talk about. Maybe they should, just to get these things in the open so you can work on them. We'll see you all after the break, and we'll continue our conversation with Allie and Amanda, because it's really important. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
Well, because it's the best. And that's true, because I've thought about that. I mean, definitely the fastest. And the biggest thing I hear most people talk about is the stability of it.
Mediacom's network is very reliable. We have a lot of programs in place that can monitor kind of issues that arise. That way we can fix them before they reach the customer.
Trust the pros. Get Extreme Internet starting at $9.99 a month for a year.
Malware and bots and worms, oh my. The wild, wild web can be a scary and complex place. And as our digital world expands, so too are the threats. Watch out, Trojan horse. That's why at Mediacom, we take security very seriously and monitor our networks around the clock to stop threats before they can affect you. Not today, rude kid. Not all internet is created equal. We build ours to keep you connected and protected.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking about youth high-risk exposure, the root causes of substance abuse, and the growing efforts to bring families together and connect communities to deal with some of these issues that make healthier communities. Allie, give us a little bit of a primer on root causes and how they influence these problems that we face with our kids today.
So as working in Lee County, Fort Madison area, we speak to community partners, we look at surveys, we talk to teachers, parents. Some of the issues that we see is lack of transportation. Public transportation is not a big thing in Lee County specifically. There's not a lot of taxi services. There is a small bus service, but it doesn't get individuals where they need to go. And this can be a problem from the kids to the parents. It could struggle with kids getting to activities during the summer, whether it's to camps, whether it's to free swim days, community events. They don't have the transportation because parents have to work. They have to go to work to be able to support them, but there's no way for the kids to get to where they need to be. And it also can be an issue with individuals who may have a substance abuse issue, whether they need to have an evaluation to get the help, or if they've already gotten the help, they've already gotten the evaluation and they have appointments, it's a struggle for them to get there. The lack of services in, Lee County alone are also an issue. We have alcohol, drug, and dependency services in Keokuk, but that's the closest one. And even sometimes you can't get into there. Then you have Burlington, which is a good 20-minute drive. So transportation and lack of services is probably one of the top 2-tier issues that I see. Of course, there's quite a few. I know within Fort Madison, like I said, they don't have a lot of transportation services. They're trying. I know that the community is working, the city council is working, they're trying to get better, but like anything else, there's a lot of hoops and jumps you have to get through to get to that. So that's how I see things in Fort Madison. Now, Amanda and Keokuk, do you see things similar to that, correct?
Yeah, I think lack of transportation is a really big thing for Keokuk as well. And like you said, ads is in Keokuk and not in Fort Madison. And there is quite a bit of distance between the two. And then the hospital is in Fort Madison, but not in Keokuk. So again, how do you get to where you need to go? And I think underneath all that too is we're a very poor community. A lot of people live in poverty. And not only that, I mean, how do you afford a vehicle to get where you need to go? How do you fix a vehicle and maintain it? That all comes into play also. So poverty is a huge, huge part of that too, I think. Then you also have families who aren't in poverty, but not quite middle class either. They're kind of in that gray area in between. And you have two-parent homes where both parents are working excessive hours to provide and kids are left unattended quite often. Or you have single-parent homes, again, where that single parent is working and who's watching their child or children and how do they pay for daycare? And it's a lot. It's very stressful, affects mental health a lot too.
Yeah, and
Yes.
you're echoing a sentiment that's probably in 80 out of 99 counties in Iowa. You know, if it's 80, if it's 78, God bless us, but it's more of them have this issue than don't.
Right.
Now, what have you seen? I mean, in I said last few years, have you seen some inroads in fixing some of these problems? Is the restructuring of like HHS maybe some hope for things getting better, or is this pretty much on the shoulders of your local communities to deal with it, and that's the way it's always been?
I think here in Keokuk, a lot of people distrust HHS. I think it's just generational. So it's really been a community effort in a lot of ways here. I'm not sure how the realignment's going to affect things yet. I think it's still too early to tell. But I know change can be hard. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Well, alignments, procedures, and bureaucracy doesn't do what people in the communities do that care about the communities.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know, I mean, and I suppose you run into it too, that there's a lot of stigma for getting help. I mean, if the help's close, you don't think of stigma as something that keeps transportation at bay, but it keeps people from making that little extra effort when it might save their life or somebody who they really care about. Have you been facing those issues with the residents too, to sort of wake them up and say, listen, we can do something about this?
Yeah, I mean, personally with Amanda and I, we sit at events, and you can see the stigma of, we have free information for resources, and there's a stigma there. And it's not just with adults, it's with youth as well. We're working to build youth coalitions within the school districts. And I sat at the high school level, and you can tell that there's a stigma there with kids of like, oh yeah, I don't want to have any part in that group. So the stigma is huge, not just in our adults, with our youth as well, and passing that information to them. It's a two-way street. Like, yes, they know that information is out there, but are they willing to use it if it's there? So it's a catch-22 in my opinion.
It sounds like it's a weight that's on your shoulders all the time, isn't it, Amanda, to help deal with that?
I also think on top of the stigma, there aren't a lot of resources here for youth that don't require an adult to be present or to sign. And that's a really big issue here. Parents either being too busy or not wanting to get involved. So that's a struggle. So even having resources to give to youth where their parent doesn't have to be involved is a challenge. And then of course the stigma of letting them, whether they're going to accept the help or not too.
We're going to take a short break, come back, continue our conversation with Allie and Amanda. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
Dad, I'm not glitching.
I told you with our new Extreme Internet, it will be smooth streaming.
That's unbelievable.
Well, you better believe it, Missy.
I already finished streaming the whole second season of my show.
So start the third.
What the fast? That's really not frustrating.
I'll take that as a compliment.
You should.
I'm gonna get some ice cream. Do you want some?
With the drama-free reliability of Extreme Internet, you'll have to create your own. Get super fast internet with whole home Wi-Fi for as low as $24.99 a month for a year.
You told me not to talk to strangers. You told me not to cross the street without looking both ways.
You told me not to touch the stove. You told me not to do drugs. You told me not to drink and drive.
You gave me so many messages about how to stay safe. Why didn't you keep me safe by properly storing your gun?
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking about some really good things happening in Southeast Iowa, and an interesting concept that third grade may be the new sixth grade, which I get. Younger kids are now facing adult-like issues, and this never happened before. how is this presenting itself in your area, and what kind of things are you doing to work with it?
So in my personal life, I have a 10-year-old. He just finished 4th grade, but I went to a training called Stewards for Children to kind of help identify when children are going through things and some words they might use. But in that training, they said 3rd grade is the new 6th grade. And if you haven't had talks with your child before they enter 3rd grade about substance use, you know, sex, body parts, all of those kind of hard conversations, if you don't have those with them before 3rd grade, they're going to hear about it from their friends in 3rd grade. And then that's how misinformation gets passed around and kids get crazy ideas. So that kind of radically changed me as a parent, because I sure did go home that evening and have a talk with my child who was about to enter 3rd grade. And I'm really glad I did, because he sure did come home several times during his 3rd grade year with questions about things he'd heard at school. So it's great to be able to open that dialogue before it even starts with his friends. So I encourage all parents to have those serious talks with your kid. Obviously, you want to make them age appropriate, but opening that dialogue I think is really important. And I do the same with the teens that I work with our youth leadership councils. You know, having that openness and transparency about talking about things reduces the stigma, kind of trains them on what to do when their friends come to them if they have problems. So it's all very intertwined and really important to have those discussions. And I think that kind of leads to social media too. I think that kids have access to social media and all sorts of things that when we were kids, we didn't have. And it's important that kids have that social media. They need those connections. It's good for them to do that. But as parents, we have to monitor what they're doing at all times and really have that open dialogue and conversation time with our kids.
Well, and I also think with it that there's a really trick to this age appropriate thing, and that what an adult thinks is age appropriate is really that 6th grader. They're not thinking the conversation with that 3rd grader should be with that. But if they don't have those conversations with 6th grade language with 3rd graders, let's put it that way, then the kids aren't going to talk to them. And that sort of gap between what a parent's role is in a child's life and what social media's and peers' roles in the child's life gets bigger and bigger. And that's probably just as powerful a gap as an income inequality or food insecurity. I mean, because if a child begins to not reconnect with parents when there's troubles, you know, how do we get a parent to understand that in this world, because of things like social media and news, that kids are now facing in 3rd grade dialogue and ideas that are adult-like problems that their parents never dealt with at that age.
Yeah.
Do you have that talk with parents about that? Because that's a big culture shift for a parent to realize that I don't know enough to talk to my own kid.
Yeah.
I think that some parents might think that their kid's never going to do it. I think that's the stigma that we have is, oh, my kid's never going to do that. They know better. But you know, parents want to have this, you know, tough relationship with them. And, you know, yes, you can come to me, but if you do something wrong, you're going to be punished for it. So I think that's kind of where giving parents education early and having them speak to their kids and say, yeah, maybe they won't do it, but you need to give them the education for if and when they get, that gets brought up to them on the playground, at a football game, wherever it may be. It's scary to hear some of the stories that, parents are, my kid just went to a basketball game and I had to pick him up at the hospital because they got into something that their friend shared with them that they didn't even know what it was. So it's giving parents education. Unfortunately, it has to be when they're young, because by the time I have a 6th grader going into 7th grade, and we talk about stuff all the time, and sometimes she educates me on stuff that I didn't even know. So yeah.
Yeah, we pretty much know that every parent that experiences some severe trauma with their child, the vast majority of them say, I never saw it coming. I didn't think it'd be my kid. Mm-hmm. And the only way to see it coming is to connect with your kid. They're the ones on the front line. And it's a hard place to imagine that our communities have changed so much with media that instead of the home being the front line to all the issues, that the kids are out there in the front lines of this battle for their attention, their habits, their behaviors, their addictions. And parents are sort of stuck in a void in the back where they have to actually work to reinvent the way we parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
And
do
I
you see
think
that?
that
Oh, go ahead.
I think that some parents liked COVID. Their kids were at home, they weren't at school. Yes, they had to be the teacher, but at least they weren't getting into stuff at school that may have caused them, to have additional bad education, I guess you could call it. So I think parents didn't like COVID, but in a roundabout way, they liked it. They had more control. They were able to see where their kids were at and what they were doing.
Well, psychiatrists on this show have said that about a third of our population is introverted. And many of them had benefits from the COVID experience because they had a lot of trauma and anxiety pulled away from their lives. And they had a freedom in that, being away from all of that, because it was sort of considered an ideal to be extroverted and to be talkative and be the center of attention. Yet a third of our population, that is not their inclination. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'd like you guys to share some final comments, insights, and inspiration for our guests. See you all after the break.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to bed.
Oh boy.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Watching MC22 is now easier than ever before. All Mediacom customers can watch local programming online anytime. Go to mc22.net, click Watch MC22, and log in with your Mediacom account. Not a Mediacom cable subscriber? Mediacom internet or phone subscribers can watch too. Your local programming leader, MC22, online at mc22.net/watch.
Dad! Dad, I'm not glitching!
I told you with our new Extreme Internet, it will be smooth streaming.
That's unbelievable!
Well, you better believe it, Missy!
I already finished streaming the whole second season of my show!
So start the third!
What the fast? That's really not frustrating!
I'll take that as a compliment.
You should!
I'm gonna get some ice cream. Do you want some?
With the drama-free reliability of Extreme Internet, you'll have to create your own. Get super fast internet with whole home Wi-Fi for as low as $24.99 a month for a year.
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we explored the importance of connecting community resources with families to keep Iowa kids safe, and the realization that even as young as third grade, children face adult-like challenges. Let's see what insights and inspiration Allie and Amanda have to share. Allie, let's start with you.
Coming from a mom of two, the one thing I always like to share with people is that parenting really is a rough job. It's not easy. We don't get handed a baby and a handbook when we leave the hospital. You just got to wing it. So, in society today, it's tough. We have to be that mean, hard parenting. My parents were rough on me, but not nearly as protective as I feel that I am. But things have changed in, 30 some years that I've been here. So, and the other thing is make sure within whatever community you live in, reach out to individuals for your resources, whether it be food banks, food pantries, see if there's, free events for kids in the summer. I know that there's a lot of communities that offer that stuff. Just being able to find that connection and get that resource to you. It's okay to not be okay and ask for help, because that's what all of us are here for. So, Amanda, what about you?
Well, before you go, Amanda, now, are you guys available for people to call you with like any question off the top of their heads? I mean, if they don't have to have like a checklist. If they feel like, wow, I just need to talk to somebody. Are you guys okay with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, Amanda, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, connection is key, especially as a parent. You have to be connected with other parents. Feeling like you're alone is a really tough thing to do and deal with. And so having those connections is really important. It's equally as important for our kids, whether that's through social media or in person or whatever that might look like. And I think one of the things to really remember is that it only takes one really good, solid connection for a kid to have with an adult to really be life-changing and to really get them to where they need to be. So that's always really hopeful, I think, and important to remember.
You know, we talked about the fact that parenting is tough today, and we need to let parents know that it's okay. Now, the question I have to ask you is, what about telling kids that they need to help their parents? Because parenting is tough and they don't know what the kids are going through, so they need to hear from them. Is that something you think would work as well?
Yeah, I often talk to my youth group kids about how tough parenting is and being appreciative of your parents. Sometimes kids get stuck in their own heads and don't really realize what's going on outside of them. So just reminding them to slow down is really important, and it helps a lot to try to help them see other people's perspectives, whether that's parents or teachers.
So both of you as parents really have, faced it from both sides.
Mhm.
What would you go back, each one of you, what would you do if you could go back, say 10 years to talk to yourself? What would you tell yourself that'd be really important to grasp sooner rather than later?
Patience. Over my years of in my career, patience. I wish I would have been more patient when things before and now. If I knew now what I knew then, I would tend to be a little bit more patient, whether that be in my own personal life, in my career, with my kids, whatever it may be. I feel that some people just try to rush through everything, and being patient is sometimes better than not.
And Amanda?
Be in the moment. I'm a very task-oriented person, and sometimes I forget to live in that moment and have those connections. And especially with my son, it goes by so fast. So I would definitely advise myself to slow down a little.
Well, thank you so very much for joining us today and sharing these important messages with our viewers. And thank you for watching today. Check out our website, ahealthyiowa.org, and keep your eye on Mediacom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. On Mediacom MC22, your local programming leader.